I do want to congratulate all of you who are leaving this school today. You should be very, very proud. You know, America's universities are among the crown jewels of this country. And now here you are graduating from one of the very best. You should just be so proud and take so much satisfaction in how far you've come. You'll rightly cherish the years that you've spent here, the way your minds have opened, how you found your true north, and how you have found and strengthened so many friendships that will be a joy for the rest of your life. Now, this is mostly about you, but you know, you wouldn't be here were it not for all these people out here, especially your parents, the faculty, your friends, and others. And I think this is a moment when I'd like to ask all of you to stand and give them an Elon cheer. Turn and greet and thank these people. Now, I hope not to speak overly long today. After 4 years of classes, clubs, study abroad, visits to late night McEwen, long nights in Belk Library, longer nights at West End, Tony's, the Oak House, countless emails, Smith Jackson, and perhaps one or two escapades into an Elon fountain. It must have been chilly out there last night in the fountain, but I know I'm the only thing that stands between you and your diploma. So let's cut to the chase. I'd like to depart from the tradition of showering you with personal advice. Instead, at the risk of offending some of you, I want to talk to you about the deepening concerns that I and many others have about the future of North Carolina, our beloved state. Repeatedly in recent years, and especially in recent months, forces of extremism have asserted themselves, representing a sharp break from our past. After decades of struggle to become a just and fair people, we are sliding backwards. We are not only damaging our reputation, but putting our fellow citizens at risk. Enough is enough. For those of us who have stayed on the sidelines, it is time to stand up and be counted. It is time to raise our voices against this darkness. Indeed, it is time for fellow citizens of all stripes, white and black, young and old, native and newcomer, men, women, and people of chosen gender, everyone, to join forces and preserve the best of who we are as a people. Each of you graduates has a personal stake in this fight. It has long been a badge of honor to be a native of this state and indeed to have an Elon degree. Unless we change course, you cannot count on that in the years ahead. More importantly, this country desperately needs your talent, your energy, and your leadership to lead us to higher ground. The struggle is not only here in North Carolina, it's all across the country. And wherever you come from, whether you come from North Carolina or you came here to college, you will face it as you leave. And it's going to be a major challenge of your generation. It is said that the arc of history bends toward justice. Indeed it does, but it won't get there without a shove. I was privileged to be born and bred in this state and can hardly emphasize how far we had once come toward a better day. When I was young, this state was dirt poor. Our people earned on average about 71 cents to every dollar earned by other Americans. Our cities were small and insular. Our rural areas were dotted with shacks. Our biggest industries, tobacco, textiles, and furniture, were starting to die. And the traditions of Jim Crow hung heavily in the air, dividing whites from blacks. For years, the North Carolina Ku Klux Klan was one of the most powerful in the country. But then slowly at first, and then rapidly, North Carolina made an historic rise through the second half of the 20th century and into the 21st. Perhaps because I'm from Durham, I date the rise from the creation of the Research Triangle Park in the mid-50s. Enlightened business leaders, and who is so enlightened today is business leaders again and again are trying to raise their voices about what's going on here. But enlightened business leaders of that time had the foresight to see that if you built it, they would come. An even more important turning point came with the 1960 election of Terry Sanford, the John F. Kennedy of the South. He was an electrifying force who drew me and many other young people into public service. Long before other Southern leaders, he insisted that blacks, women, and others at the margins should have an honorable seat at the table too. It wasn't a popular stand. Indeed, he suffered at the polls, yet he never flinched. In his wake, influenced by Terry, came other leaders like Bill Friday and Skipper Bowles, and more recently Jim Hunt, Dan Blue, and yes, Republican governors like Jim Holshouser and Jim Martin. Just yesterday, Elon gave an honorary degree to Henry Fry, who was another pioneer. And as he became the first African American to break barrier after barrier and was the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. Henry Fry is another person who represents the best of what this state has been and can be and has to be again. All of these people stood up for a new South, one that honored the rights of all while listening and respecting voices of disagreement. They believed in moderation, reaching across the aisle, building consensus, and the importance of goodwill. North Carolina won the respect of the nation. But I must tell you that the most credit for a rise as a people belongs elsewhere. It belongs to those courageous young men and women, mostly black, a few white, who sat in at lunch counters here in Greensboro, rode buses into Mississippi, had dogs sicked on them in Birmingham, and had their heads bashed in on Pettus Bridge. We should always be grateful to them for their bravery. They not only pressured us to change our ways, they opened our eyes to the injustices in our midst. Growing up in Durham, I remember how often I was told by my white elders that black folks like to live on the other side of town, going to rundown schools, living through indignities. The civil rights movement helped me to see, as it did so many others, that that was a pack of lies. As Lincoln said about the abolition of slavery, the ending of Jim Crow and the beginnings of this new era were not only good for blacks, but for whites as well. The civil rights movement liberated people of every background to lead more fulfilling and more virtuous lives. I also believe that when walls started coming down between the races, walls started coming down between North Carolina and the rest of the country, a new economy and a new society could finally take off. Companies saw that this had become a good place to call home, to attract employees, to raise families, to pump life into our universities, and to unleash a new spirit of innovation. You heard my son Christopher is here with Heather, his wife, and their children, Maya and Liam. And from opening up startup hubs here in Raleigh, Greensboro, and Charlotte, Christopher can tell you firsthand how young entrepreneurs are eager to be here in North Carolina, sparking off each other, inventing new businesses, creating new jobs, and you'll be among them. You'll have your own startups in this class, believe me. We haven't reached our destination yet. These past few years have been especially tough on working class folks. Whites still earn more than blacks. Men earn more than women. But we are still much better off than we were before. We are much better off than we were before. The average North Carolinian makes 85 cents now on that dollar. And the dollar goes further due to a lower cost of living here in North Carolina. Our unemployment rate is below that national average. Our universities are now first class. No better example than the rise of this university. When I was growing up, this was a rather small, unknown university down the road. We didn't know much about it. Now it's a world-class university. That's where it represents what we've become. Charlotte is known as the second biggest banking center in the country. Chapel Hill is one of the best places to live. Raleigh-Durham is abuzz with innovation, and Greensboro is emerging as a hot destination for design. Best of all, we are learning to live together as one people. Black or white, male, female, or transgender. Our children barely see the differences anymore. That's why so many native North Carolinians have proclaimed that we're proud to be from here, and others have been proud to bring their families and businesses. Or at least that's where many of us thought we were, until just a few years ago. Then suddenly, without warning, dark clouds arrived. The moderation that characterized our state, the belief among Republicans and Democrats that we are all in this together, gave way to a new, mean-spirited extremist politics. Let's be clear. The people elected to state office in recent years got there fair and square. They had the gumption to run for public office, and voters chose them to serve. I am sure most of these newcomers also meant well. But the signals coming out of the state capitol in Raleigh have sent a thunderous message rolling out across America that North Carolina is no longer a pioneer in advancing people of color, people who are gay, people who are living on the margins. Instead, many here want to go back, far back to a darker time. This is not the place to relitigate each and every issue. But what other message did state legislators think they were sending? What did they intend when they seriously restricted access to voting, embraced the constitutional amendment to deny equal rights to gays and lesbians, placed more restrictions on abortion, enacted a flatter tax imposing heavier burdens on the less fortunate, lightening burden for the wealthy, rejected federal funding for Medicaid and unemployment benefits, and cuts funds for schools as well as state universities, our pride and joy. This is not the North Carolina that we all loved, a North Carolina dedicated to equal opportunity and a growing, inclusive prosperity. Now, incredibly, we have wandered into a needless fight over the bathroom rights of transgender people. It is hard to believe that we have broken two of the cardinal rules of politics. First, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Second, leave as much power as you can in the hands of local people. Until now, nothing really seemed broken, and a few instances when problems arose, good folks in places like Charlotte, Greensboro, and Raleigh found ways to settle them quietly and without fanfare. But the sudden rush by the state legislature to pass a law imposing a one-size-fits-all solution, and worse yet, a solution that seems to punish transgender people who are so vulnerable. We have to realize that the stress, the anxiety these folks are going through, and appreciate it, be compassionate about it. If you look at the suicide rates among people who think of themselves as transgender, you have no choice but to feel, what can we do to make their lives better? Instead, it is incredibly disappointing. It's just heartbreaking to see this state, this beloved state, become a poster child of backward-looking leadership. Now we're in the same headlines as Mississippi. Frankly, I wish the federal government had kept its paws out of this for a while longer. With more time, people of goodwill here and in other states might have worked out answers, had not the feds tried to impose their own answers. Instead, we now face the very real prospect of a protracted, destructive legal fight with our state, with our fair state held up again and again to a harsh spotlight. There have to be creative solutions. I can tell you there are creative solutions. There are things that can be done, and where all roads point to where our ultimate destination should be, and that is repeal HB 2. Repeal HB 2. Until then, prominent companies will shun the state and jobs will be lost. There is virtually a freeze that's now in existence. Companies that had planned to come here have put everything on hold. There's a freeze. And think what that means to jobs for you and for others. Innovators will take their startups elsewhere. Entertainers and sports teams will find other venues. And as we're already starting to see, out-of-state students will hesitate to come to college here, as will prospective faculty and staff. I am sure that many of you here disagree. I am equally sure that some of your disagreements have merit. These are complicated issues, as our governor has said. But let's face it, the very political leaders who have tried so hard to make this state more welcoming to business, to companies to come here, they've been dedicated to that. They have taken steps for companies now to say, no thanks. We're going to wait a while. We're going to watch and see what happens. Let me emphasize that at heart, our differences are not Democrat versus Republican, nor are they liberal versus conservative. Please remember that the governor of South Carolina, who lowered the Confederate flag, is a conservative Republican. The governor of Georgia, who vetoed a transgender bill, is a conservative Republican. The governor of Oklahoma, who just yesterday vetoed a bill that would criminalize abortion, is a conservative Republican. No, the real differences here are between moderates versus extremists, between those who want a better life for all citizens and those who want to go back. My friends, we dare not go back in this state. No, we need to take North Carolina back. Those of you awarded degrees here today will have excellent opportunities for work and further study. Employers love to hire Elon graduates. They're dedicated, smart, and have good values. I know. 2 have been working with me at Harvard these past months. Greg Honan, a recent undergraduate 2 years ago, and Josh O'Bonney, who's here too. He's graduating this weekend from the Elon Law School and Business School. Both are terrific. And they are so representative of the rest of you here tonight. You're going to have good lives and employment. As you leave here, you will not only want to build careers, but families. I'm sure you'll succeed there as well for the most part. But I plead with you, not everybody, we all have our ups and downs. I would plead with you not to stay on the sidelines as this state and this country struggle to overcome our differences and reclaim our heritage. Get in the arena. Join the fight. Serve and lead. You may think that coming of age in a place like this, here tucked away in North Carolina, you can't make a difference. Think again. Over a century and a half ago, Levi Coffin was born here in Guilford County. What did he do? He grew up to start the Underground Railroad. During the Depression, a black woman who grew up in Durham, Pauli Murray, became a civil rights activist. She had a close friendship and enormous influence with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. There's a new book out about their relationship. In 1960, the black students who sat at Woolworth lunch counters here in Greensboro ignited the civil rights movement. President Obama's Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, was born in Greensboro and tagged along with her father to watch court proceedings in Durham. The door, they open doors. That same door will open for you, no matter where you live in America. There are opportunities to make a difference, to make a change. I will not go into all the details today, but I just want to tell you one other thing, because this was my experience. Growing up here, I was attracted into public service by Terry Sanford when he was governor. I heard the call, and I went to work as an intern in Raleigh. And he started something called the Good Neighbor Council, the North Carolina Good Neighbor Council, that was to keep racial peace and to advance education and jobs for everyone, starting with African Americans. And I asked if I could be an intern for the Good Neighbor Council. And Terry said yes, and I went over to work for a fellow named Dave Coltrane. And Dave Coltrane he grew up at a hardscrabble farm. He became budget director of the state. He was a segregationist most of his life, and then he saw the light and he became a devotee of what Terry was trying to do to manage integration here in this state in a good way. And I went to work for him. He had a secretary, and I was everything else. I was his research assistant, his advisor. I was his driver. We crisscrossed the state, trying to form good neighbor councils all across the state. I loved that job. I came back for 2 more summers, and I just want to tell you this. I've had the privilege of working in 4 White Houses, for 4 presidents, for 3 Republicans, and 1 Democrat. And it is an unbelievable privilege to do that. But I will tell you this. The opportunity to work here in this state, to work on civil rights in this state, remains for me the most cherished part of my public service. It's the most satisfying because it was right, it was a good thing to be doing, and I was working with good people. And I'm just telling you, those opportunities are out there for you. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 16, congratulations again this graduation day. May you go forth from here with pride in what you have accomplished and excitement about what lies ahead. May you remember your friends, your teachers here at Elon, and let their spirit be your guide as you build your family, career and family. But again, I plead with you, please don't stay on the sidelines as America struggles to find a better path forward. Come off the bench, get in the arena. You will find that many will disagree with you. Just as here, I'm sure there are many who have disagreed with me and find it offensive that I've spoken this way on the commencement day. But don't let your disagreements make them your enemies. Find common ground. Work hard to respect the views of others. You will get knocked down and there will be severe disappointments. Embrace the fact that change is hard. But know this, if you pour your heart and soul into rebuilding a better state and nation, you will look back one day and find an inner satisfaction, the pride knows no bounds, that you answered the call to service and leadership. A veteran of the Civil War, 3 times wounded grievously, famously told his students some 20 years later that all the hardships of the Civil War, all the struggles, he said, but we knew this, that in our youth, our hearts were touched with fire. Our hearts were touched with fire. That can be you. 20 years from now, you can look back from what you did, how you served, how you led, how you made a difference to make this a better state and make this a better nation. You will look back and say, your hearts were touched with fire. Good luck and Godspeed.